All right, guys, here for round number 4. We're here to talk a little bit of money because cash rules everything around us. Cream, get the money. Dollar bills, y'all. The pay-per-view model that ESPN Plus is in business with the UFC is something that we've been thinking about for a while here. I think a good place to start is understanding that the age of talking your way into a pay-per-view draw and getting pay-per-view points for doing that work, I guess, and selling that fight, selling yourself, that time is over. The UFC is in a different spot now where the brand is over top of the fighters. If the Reebok deal didn't already take away sponsorship dollars from the fighters before, this is just another paywall that the fighters are hitting in terms of being able to maximize their dollars based on their draw. We're hearing a lot of things. Conor McGregor is the last person that we're going to see ever, at least in the current model, to go and make a shit ton of money off of their pay-per-view draw. You got people like Masvidal saying, hey, look, man, don't even pay me my show money. Give me pay-per-view points. People like Brock Lesnar, the only reason they were coming over there was because of pay-per-view points, and he stopped coming over there because of those things. You know, Ronda Rousey was a huge push, huge grab and everything like that. But she got paid what she got paid because people wanted to tune in. It was must see. Now what happens if you're must see? It's a little bit different. Like, you're not going to get that pay-per-view share. If you're not a champion, you're not getting that kind of dollars. And that's one of the main things I'm noticing here is the pay structure is very different from the major leagues. You go other major leagues. You go and look at something like the NFL where it's a 50-50 split, where it's players and the owners, that's how they split the revenue. Whereas in the UFC, 18% go to the fighters. We alluded to this earlier in round 2, talking about, hey, like, these fighters in a way they said, like Dana White says, they're independent contractors, but in a large in part, these people are underpaid employees. If you do think about it from that perspective, that's why you have the Henry Cejudos of the world going and saying, hey, this isn't really worth my time. Jon Jones, who gets paid $5 million a fight, is asking for 10 to go fight Francis Ngannou. Colby, Jorge, Connor, Nate Diaz screaming and tweeting about these fighters. This is why no one's going to get paid, because there's always going to be somebody who's not taking their worth and just wants to fight. And he's ripping on someone like a Gilbert Burns, just going and taking whatever money they will pay because he's going for legacy. That's where I want to start right there, though. Where do you draw the line between someone just wanting to fight for legacy versus fighting for dollars? Because at the end of the day, you need to support your family.
Well, it's so cheesy to say this, right? And it's not always even the right answer because it's unfair. But listen, if you fight for legacy, the dollars will follow, right? Jon Jones was a young kid who fought for the belt. Then he went on to get paid now $5 million a fight, regardless of who the opponent is, right? Whether he's fighting like literally no-name guys, unless you're hardcore guys like Anthony Smith, like Thiago Santos, like Dominic Reyes, which are hard fights for him, which he's getting paid $5 million to do, whereas someone else in the division might get paid 50 grand, right? If you fight for legacy, the dollars will follow. It's ironic. We were talking earlier in the show about Masvidal saying, oh, I want don't even pay my show money. I'll just take whatever I get as for pay-per-view points. Hey, Jorge, then take the title fight for whatever they're paying you. Then you can get all of the pay-per-view points, bro. That's exactly how that works. So I think, yes, while they are probably underpaid, and Dana White kind of frames it as, oh, well, they're independent contractors and no one forces them to fight. Jorge Masvidal is also right when he says, no, we're not, because we can't go fight anywhere else. We're under contract here. We have to fight with you for whatever it is that you pay for us. However, they agree to deal. So, I mean, there's huge variance, across the divisions. Really, at one point, though, Jorge Masvidal was very happy with his new contract, right? That he signed a new 8-fight deal, right? At one point, Jon Jones was very happy that he was getting a $40 million contract, right? Not including pay-per-view points as champion, right? Like, there's factors that I don't think the fighters want to talk about. But then again, if I was, a UFC fighter in that position, and I think, listen, how much revenue am I generating for this company? And I'm only seeing a small percentage of it. Even Connor alluded to that a while back when he was talking about, listen, like, I want shares in the company or else this isn't worth it to me anymore. And then the UFC said, okay, well, how about we pay you 80 million? He's like, all right, that sounds reasonable then. It's, you know what I mean? Like, I think if you fight for legacy, the dollars will follow. But I understand why people get so upset if anybody who holds leverage just gets undercut by the next guy who's willing to do the work, right? It's what prevents money from driving forward. It's like, Mike, if you and I were going to go have the same qualifications for a job and then, I told your boss, hey, I will do exactly what he's doing, but for $20 less, they'd be like, oh, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like, undercutting is unfair. But then again, if you want to go and overplay your hand, I guess, to a company that isn't willing to play ball, then there's nothing that you can really do about it. I think it's important for the fighters to fight through their deals, and then when they have leverage towards the end, then they can walk. But at the end of the day, I know it's a tough spot, because obviously it's such a physical sport, and injuries can happen. But you can't play hardball with a company who signs your checks if you have agreed to fight for that amount, especially if you're a veteran guy, right? It's not even like they're newcomers to the sport or to the division, where they're saying, listen, I have to fight for 10K like the dudes at the bottom of the card are. These are guys who are making a lot more money, who think they're worth more. But at the end of the day, okay, sign a shorter deal then, right? Sign a 4-fight deal and say, listen, I'm not going to renew my contract unless it's for 3-4 fights. And then we can renegotiate afterwards, because then you can really test your worth. Because I'm sure a company like Bellator would love to take top tier talent and pay them more, but not if you tie yourself down to these giant lucrative contracts, and then want to change them early on.
I think one of the things that we have to see, if you want to see effective change, you need to have a few people walk out. If just Jon Jones leaves and goes to Bellator, shrug of the shoulder. If just Masvidal goes, shrug of the shoulder. But if like, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but if Sean O'Malley and Jon Jones and Jorge Masvidal and all these guys just go in a package deal, like peace out, we're out. Now you might have some, because how many of you guys are tuning in to Ryan Bader to fight in Bellator? Like, he's one of the best in the world, but how many people are tuning in to go see Douglas Lima? Like, this is where we're at. This is the biggest show in town.
Right.
And they have that leverage and they acknowledge it. Is it right that they took away the sponsorship deals and just did a Reebok thing? No, you're taking money out of the paychecks of the fighters. Is it right that the pay-per-view points are gone? Hey, I mean, that makes the league more sustainable and the brand more sustainable. Then, I mean, it's sustainability that you're asking for. But is it right? Are you doing right by the fighters at every turn? I can't say that they are. But at the same time, with the fighters having unrealistic expectations at times, what do you expect? Like, you can't get paid Deontay Wilder money, Jon Jones. He gets paid $40 million, Deontay does, because boxing is old money as old money gets. This is the new sport on the block. Like, yes, the UFC is the world leader in this sport, but this sport is as old as I am, 1993. The sport isn't very old. Boxing can sit there and pay these guys a shit ton of money because they've been boxing for centuries now, and like in a league setting, been doing it for just over a century. That's old money. MLB, old money. You talk about Dana White talks about, oh well, these fighters. He's like, it's not like the NFL where it's like, oh, if you don't play, like you're like you're under contract, you have to fight. He's like, they don't have to fight. My combat to that claim is, but they're getting paid to rehab. Like, it's part of your contract. You can't play and you have a legitimate thing that you suffered on the field of play. You're getting paid. So that time that they have to spend off, they're still getting some semblance of a paycheck. I don't know the nuances of it, but I know they're getting paid. In the UFC, you don't fight, you don't get paid. And oftentimes you're not getting paid your worth. So I understand the frustration of the fighters, but that's where a union would happen. But guess what? Who's not going to sign the union? The people with the most influence, because they're the champions. So it's like, I want to keep making my money. I don't want to rock the boat. If it's going to cost me and make less money, so that if it costs me less money to make less money, to make you more money, I'm not going to be on board because I'm all about my money. They're individual contractors, so they're pit against each other at the same time of being pit against the company, which is the ultimate insulation from a unionization.
Yep, which is why I don't think that that I don't really see a change happening here, because there's been no fighters union that's withstood the test of time, right? Because how could it, right? For exactly
Look
what you
at
just
Tim
said.
Sylvia. Tim
Right.
Sylvia with his forearm. He's like, hey, UFC, you guys, how many promotions has he fought for, though, after he left the UFC? Why are you coming to the UFC? What, because they make the most money and they're the biggest league and they're the ones whose doctors did it? It's just interesting to me to see that, but go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, it's just, you have these, these elite athletes, the ones who value themselves as underpaid, but are still paid way more than they would if they're just sitting around, waiting And not to mention the UFC, it's a machine, right? I can make new stars. I can put some kid who's really good against guys who aren't that good and turn him into a superstar and then pay him what he thinks he's worth. And then, in a few years when he thinks, okay, I'm getting too good for this, I'll do it again. Right? Like there's UFC is smart when they have to build their stars and they're going to fulfill like Sean O'Malley, right? You can get an extra 50 grand, 100 grand a night with your bonuses, right? With your win bonus, with your performance of the night, fight of the night, all of that stuff. He can earn it and he can earn himself a bigger contract by continuing to do that. But if he says, listen, I'm going to sit out because I think I deserve this, then the UFC says, okay, well, we're going to stop promoting you then. And we're going to stop giving you the good fights that you want. And then maybe we won't give you the bonuses, right? Because at the end of the day, UFC is a machine and they have to make their money and they don't want to deal with people who are trying to screw them.
100%. That pretty much wraps up what we have to say about this. Obviously, this is a developing situation as we see a lot of fighters during a pandemic of all times kind of rising up and saying something despite just signing fresh contracts. Hopefully the timing changes as to when these issues arise. And it's really difficult for these fighters being individual contractors fighting for their dollars because not everyone's contract doesn't end at the same time. It doesn't have a fixed date where everyone's contract is expired. So
there's not even a season, right? It's literally like your contract could be worth several years if you took 2 years off.
It makes it almost impossible for people to band together and be like, we're walking collectively. So that's something to be, let us know in the comment section
what you think. Yeah, because we know like some of this sounds really harsh and obviously it's easy to talk as outsiders looking in. If we were in those positions, we'd want to make the maximum amount of dollars too. All of us want to make as much money as we can. But, are we being unreasonable here? Do you think that they should be paid more? And if so, like why? Well, what arguments can we really make to say, yes, they should all do this or none of them should? Let us know what you think.
Well, that concludes round number 4 here. Honestly, it's a big deal there because honestly, I think paying the fighters less is one of the reasons that the UFC was able to come back first. That's also one of the things. We're enjoying fights as fight fans because of the ability for them to pay them 18% of the revenue. So, it gets when it comes down to the numbers and you're able to put your sport back on and a lot of doors get opened. But that concludes round number 4 and we'll check you guys on the next one.